see your sewing machine and your wigs and all of that. Have you had heaps of time? Have you used the time for you know,
No.
drag? No.
No.
Yeah, it's Jojo's Wednesdays. Days spending with Joseph. I love Jojo's Wednesdays. Everybody's hanging out with Joseph. I love Wednesdays. Cause we're hanging out with Jojo's way. But it's not really about me, it's about everyone else.
So I bought the sewing machine and all the stuff I need to go with it at the beginning of the first lockdown.
Yeah.
Like back in March. And then underneath where I've got my computer set up, I've got 2 tubs which are at 130 litres each, so 260 litres, that are chock full of fabric that I was planning to use to practice and learn to sew. And I just haven't.
Yeah, big plans, and that's what they'll stay.
I think they'll say that way. I mean, I'm a bit of a more visual learner, so I'd rather wait until I can have someone come over. I've just clocked my sunburn. Yeah, I'd rather wait till someone comes over and we can, they can assist me get my drag measurements, because I've like lost weight, then gained weight, then lost weight, and then so my the measurements that I have aren't correct, and I don't want to practice making these garments that aren't correct. So I'd rather have someone come over and help me out a little bit.
Yeah, I'm also I'm motivated by having people there a lot of the time. So unless I have someone that is going to be chasing up on what I'm doing, then a lot of the time I won't get it done.
Yeah.
How did you get into drag?
There's a few different origin stories.
Okay, I'll ask something more specific then.
No, I can go into them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's different parts of how Holly came to be, I suppose. Technically, I'd had a couple of friends. I just had a call with them yesterday actually, who had put me into drag way back when I lived on the Gold Coast, so about 8 or 9 years ago. Put me in drag a couple of times and took me out. I don't really count that as a drag beginning though, because it was messy as hell. But it was kind of, I suppose, the first time that I experienced being able to go out as a new persona.
Yeah.
And then I had an opportunity through my day job. They had a salesperson at the time who had this idea to have a trolley dolly visit a client office.
Right.
And they thought that I would make a fantastic drag queen. So they actually paid for Film a Box to paint me. So we got a wig from a friend of mine. I wore one of the female uniforms from the hotel, went out and got Film a Box to do a face for me. And then I went out to this client office and served them cocktails and refreshments in drag, promoting a hotel chain.
Right.
Pretty cool. And that kind of that's where Holiday Night and the name came from. So there was an original drag name, but that is now buried into the abyss. And Holiday Night, because we needed to represent the hotel brand, which was the Holiday Inn.
Yeah.
So that kind of gave me an inkling of okay, I like this a bit more. And then from there, it kind of spitballed into doing some it started off as a secret drag routine for the Melbourne Chargers. So we created a drag cheerleader troupe for the rugby team called the Chargettes. So me and a couple of the other players did that, and the response was just insane. So it became a regular thing for that. And then from there, I figured I should actually learn how to do this myself. And I started doing drag myself, which is when I count my start in drag, is when I started doing my own makeup. Started about 4 years ago. So,
whoa.
Yeah, a few starts.
You Melbourne charged through all of those kind of bits. And just for a bit of context, the Melbourne Chargers is a gay.
Yeah, they're a gay inclusive rugby union team based here in Melbourne.
Yeah.
So I had been involved with them for years as a supporter. I'd been on their committee. I'd been their cheerleader.
And you find it kind of easy to find a few that are also interested in doing drag for the chargettes, is it?
There's plenty of them that would make fantastic drag queens, but I have yet been able to convince them to make the jump from the field to the stage.
So when it comes down to it, like, why is drag important to you? What about the craft or the community?
It's definitely changed over time. So when I was starting to do drag myself and learn makeup and do the persona, it was a couple of things. So a little bit of it was friends had told me I'd make a great drag queen, I should do it. And then we did the chargettes thing and I got a huge, like this boost from having 400, 500 people at circuits screaming my name, cheering after our first performance, and that kind of like spitballed it from there. It was also an opportunity for me at the time where I was kind of experimenting with gender stereotypes in my day-to-day life. I wasn't fully comfortable in a masculine spectrum. I wasn't fully comfortable in a feminine spectrum, but I wanted to explore that more. Like I really loved like makeup and nails and like women's fashion and stuff like that. But I couldn't quite, as much as I tried to blend the two together, it was never quite 100% myself and me. And then through being able to do drag, I was able to channel all of the femininity and like female-centric kind of like things that I loved and wanted to try into my drag persona, Holly. So that is, it is there. And for me, drag and Holly it's the same person. Like I'm not a performer who has an onstage persona versus a real life persona, and they're completely split. I see Holly as an extension and an accentuation of all the femininity that I love. And then through that, being able to have that channel where I could put all of that into the makeup and the wigs and the lashes and the nails and stuff, I was able to really find my own masculinity outside of that, and really become really more comfortable and confident in myself as a boy out of drag and as a woman in drag. And then from there, it's kind of evolved. Obviously getting my gig Drag Roulette at Molly's on a Sunday, and being able to interact with the crowd and kind of support a lot of up and coming queens and kings. That kind of shifted it away from just a pure focus on myself doing drag. I've always kind of known that I don't want to be like a big production show queen. I want to be a host. I want to host shows and have others be the stars, but be the kind of the glue that holds it together. So Drag Roulette really was an opportunity to do that. And then through that, I've really found a passion for like helping the younger generation of performers, and not so much younger, but just new people who are new to performing, in finding their way and bettering them. And through that and through Drag Roulette and now Lip Sync Roulette, I've seen over 100 performers cross my stage, stages.
Can you explain Drag Roulette a bit, just what it is?
So Drag Roulette and by extension Lip Sync Roulette are a drag show where any drag performer can put their name into a hat, basically, and we draw them out randomly into groups. They perform a song that is absolutely shuffled on Spotify. So they have access to a playlist that they can learn a list of about 50 songs, but they don't get a choice of what song they perform. It really is randomly selected on the night. So it goes from that, and then the winner of each round goes through a finale round, and then the winners get cash prizes. And it's kind of become a bit of a Melbourne institution. The Sundays at Molly's for Drag Roulette. Some even go as far to call it church. And so then with lockdown coming into play, that kind of had to stop, obviously. And then from the performers still wanting to do something, Lip Sync Roulette was born, which is a separate company that does basically the same show, which we've kind of tweaked for more of a digital audience. And that's been really successful in that we have had a full cast of 16 for the last 3 months. We're booked solid for the next 3 weeks. which is really, really cool. And the donations that come through from that, it has been insane as well. So yeah, really, really cool things. So that's the show. And I've just really found my groove hosting it and being able to like bring a community together, both drag and the crowd, and bring it along as a journey together.
So with the I'm kind of like backtracking back to what you were kind of saying about the expression of kind of gender or within yourself, and you're kind of saying that drag is more of an extension and an accentuation, did you say, of yourself? So Holly is Justin, but it's just a more
yeah. So well, that's how I see it, at least. And you can ask a lot of like you've met me both in and out of drag, and a lot of my friends that obviously know me in and out of drag, and my personality and persona don't really change that much. There's just certain things that'll accentuate more. So when I'm in drag, I'm more of that kind of campy, sassy, like drag queen moment, but it's still underneath it all, it's still me. It's still my experiences leading the story that I tell through drag.
Yeah.
And then, I'm still kind of Holly in a way when I'm out of drag. So I don't really see a clear disconnect between the two, but I definitely see spotlights on different aspects of my personality when I'm in drag and when I'm out of drag. And I kind of flip between the two as well when I'm in both phases, for sure. I mean, it depends on the situation that I'm in as well.
This might be a bit of a loaded question as well, and I know I'm kind of dusting because when I think of drag, I've got my mind spirals and I get all of these different opinions about certain, and I've had lots of different like experiences with certain drag queens, and I'm like, does that define drag? Does that define drag? Or what is this big thing? Yeah. Would you be able to kind of, in your opinion, or kind of summarize what you think that drag means to the LGBT plus community?
Yeah, loaded question.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I'm like, it's a really loaded. Do you have? If you don't, I can be more specific. No.
Like, I think definitely drag is a huge part of the queer community. Throughout history, drag queens are quite often the voice when there is oppression and problems, and they are there to lead rallies and lead marches and entertain and bring joy when there isn't always joy and whatnot. So queens have always had a spot within the heart of the queer community. It hasn't always been 100% respected and loved. It's always definitely there's an aspect of queens are idolized, but then there's this there's been a shift in the way that people interact with you as a drag queen. So 5-10 years ago, if you did drag, it was very hard to find a partner because they saw you still as less than because you did drag, even though they would worship you on stage and you'd be this, voice of your community, of your local community, of the queer community at whole. People still didn't want to fully embrace that. You were a character, you weren't a person.
Yeah, people do become would be enigmatic or a character. Would that be the right use of the word?
You're using words that I'm not.
Why am I saying words that I don't know?
I suppose a lot of people they see the stage character, but they don't see the person behind it. But I think that is definitely shifting, at least from my experience. I did have a phase where people were like, oh, I wish I could see more of Justin and not just Holly, or I could see more of Holly and not just Justin, that kind of thing. And I was like, well, I'm the same person. And I had to kind of like shift their perspectives of when you're with me, no matter what persona I'm in, you're there. I mean,
you're
when
still
I'm in drag, I'm usually working. So it might mean that I don't have as much attention for you when I'm in drag, but I'm still the same person. I still have the same life experiences. It's not like a split personality type of thing, which I've heard of some queens who are completely split personality, where when they're in drag, they are that persona and that persona only, and they've got no memory of that once they snap out of it and come back to being a boy, which is quite interesting. But but yeah, I think the standing of drag queens has definitely changed with like the mainstreaming of RuPaul's Drag Race and like the Boulet Brothers and the franchises of that crossing into Thailand, Canada, UK, and now Holland as well. So it's definitely the role of drag in society is shifting to more, I suppose, entertainment and not as much what I'm looking for.
Being a beacon or no? Oh, sorry.
What were you saying?
Sorry, what did you say? Activism?
Yeah, so like kind of like, yeah, we're not so much the political activist voice of the community, but more entertainment as well.
I remember when I was when I first started going into the gay scene and I was kind of navigating the gay scene, I wasn't like at all jaded. I was like really nice and a bit too scared of hurting feelings or having my feelings hurt. And so when I went out, I actually had this kind of idea that like I had this assumption that drag queens were kind of like I don't know how to say. I put them on this kind of a pedestal that's kind of like they are kind of this beacon
like
of
celebrity.
Well, celebrity, but more like this kind of in a way a leadership role to say like this is what the community is about, right? This is what I had the assumption of, and then I met the nastiest queen I've ever met, and I literally was just like, "Hey, how are you? What's going on?" Like, I definitely didn't. No, coulda, woulda, shoulda. And then I was kind of like,
privately who it was. I'm curious now.
Honestly, I've forgotten. But yeah, after that, I met a few more, and I always had a very similar, like, really sassy response or like really dismissive response. And to be fair, you know, I wasn't someone that was exuding any self-confidence. So why spend your time on that? But like,
yeah, I mean, sometimes like I know there's definitely been like basically when you're in drag, you're working essentially. So part of that is people in clubs expect that you owe them your attention. So there's definitely been a few nights out where people have had a few too many drinks, where they've been quite demanding of my attention and invading my personal space as well. So a lot of the times you'll see queens do shows and then they'll kind of like duck off to a corner in a smoker's room where they're kind of surrounded by their close friends to kind of buffer them away from the crowd, which sometimes is needed. You need that break. It can be quite draining having to kind of exude all that energy and like build a night and on a stage and build the crowd and build that that feeling and that vibe, and then when you're off stage sometimes you just need to decompress. So definitely I can see where queens can come across as that abrasive, rude, dismissive. And some queens are just like that. Some queens are rude and abrasive and dismissive and just in it for the wrong reasons, and others you can kind of tell the ones that just need a break. A lot of queens that I know in Melbourne are quite like introverted people privately, which is strange that so many of us are drag queens who are these big voices and these big personalities and these loud and out there characters, but then behind closed doors, we're just these people that want to like retreat and not see anyone and be by ourselves and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and you're saying like people are going out and they're working. Like when you're in drag, it's work, and you kind of go out. And a lot of the time, I would say probably most of the time, I don't want to make the assumption, but it's not paid. It's just networking.
Queens are quite well looked after in Australia. So if they're on stage, they are normally getting paid. There are exceptions to that. Sometimes you'll do a gig or a private show or something, and then you just want to go out afterwards and you're already in the look, so you just stay in it and go out.
Okay.
But like if you're leading, and that is networking, and starting out as a drag queen, networking is what gets you gigs. You have to go out in drag without being paid, to be seen, to be known, to network with the professional queens.
Yeah, unless you've already got, you know, some
Yeah,
form of performative experience that.
yeah, and then once you're like, you've got a show, you are paid for the show that you do. So I know that when I started getting a paid show, I stopped going out in drag for fun as much because I wanted to save that for when I was on stage a little bit. Like, it's a little bit of like, why give your art away for free when you can get paid to do it, in a bit of a selfish way. And then you also just want to, I myself don't want to do drag too much because I don't want it to lose its fun.
Yeah, I can
I've
understand
definitely
that.
been in those positions where it's stopped being as fun to do and I've been burnt out, and you can tell on stage. And I'm quite an open person with my like feelings and where I'm at, and a lot of people will tell you that you should hide that when you're hosting a show, but I found that with my style of hosting and the show that I host, when I'm having those moments, it's being able to have my crowd feel connected to me. And then I've had heaps of conversations afterwards where they've come up and said, thank you so much for talking about your, your spike in depression, or like this situation or that situation or whatever, because it helps them kind of come to terms with what they're feeling as well. And they'll connect with that way. And I've had some really, really amazing and special connections with my crowd through that. And it's quite a unique experience to be able to have that. And I don't think I'll ever change the way that I do my shows like that. Even though it doesn't work for everyone, for me, it's been quite successful in building community. And you've been to my shows, and anyone watching this, that if you haven't had a chance to come to our show, find out how to watch me. The feedback is always it has this overwhelming sense of community. Everyone's part of the show. So yeah.
If you want, I can put a link into where they can watch if you have one.
Yeah, just with my face, my Instagram or something.
Instagram, sure.
Yeah.
What was I thinking about? With the work, and it is a lot of effort. Even after you've done your paid gig, you technically could go home and chill out. Yeah. But you kind of make that choice to stay and enjoy the community that you've just kind of, you're a part of it, and you're kind of leading it. And you're in like an intimate space as well as what you're saying with the sharing quite intimate stories or personal stories. You a lot of the gay bars are very intimate spaces, and it kind of, I think that's great for you to be able to do that, because I don't know, when a space that kind of closed is used in that kind of a way, it's quite important, because it becomes a shared experience. And
yeah, and I suppose it loops back to that drag being a voice for a community. And I think that by being able to like break down the barrier between myself and my crowd, and bring them along for my experience and their experience, it's more rewarding that way. Like there's definitely days where I just want to get out of there. I'll do the show, I'll breeze through it, and I will bounce out of there as soon as the final number's done. And then there are other days where all I want to do is sit there and have drinks on the balcony and connect with people and chat to the new friends I make, and be there with all of my sisters. And go watch their shows afterwards. I mean, I'm already out, so I may as well like stay out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I suppose it depends on the individual of how much they want to give of themselves as well, really, and how much you have to give of yourself. But I like being open. I'm quite open as a person anyway, so I suppose that spilling over into my drag life doesn't really, it's not a shock to anyone. But that's how I would interact with my people.
Yeah. How did you initially navigate the gay scene? Like, what was your kind of first impressions going out? Did you start going out at 18 or later?
Yeah, I started going out when I was 18. But I think my first, I don't know. So I came out when I was 15. So that's 15 years ago. I've been out for half my lifetime now, which is pretty cool. Pretty crazy when I think about it. So I came out at 15. The internet was just kind of really taking off for social media. So MySpace was huge. So I had like connected and stalked like other gay people that live in my area to try and find friends who may have gone through the same experiences. And then through that kind of like found, also I was in Queensland at the time. So I went to Pride Fair up in Brisbane when I was like 16, which was quite overwhelming actually to be a gay person with no gay friends and no kind of like experience with gay people, to go to gay pride, and it was quite overwhelming and an incredible experience, to the point where I was too afraid to go to the fair. I just watched the march, followed it along, and then at the fair day I was kind of like, oh, I think I might just want to go home now, and kind of like bounce back into the city to my comfort zone. But then when I was 18, living on the Gold Coast, going out, I've always been a bigger guy, so my experience with the gay scene on the Gold Coast was quite, I was a marginalised person, because everyone there was quite thin, and that was the look, and that was that. So to kind of overcompensate for that, I became this like really sassy, bitchy, stereotype gay, to kind of like be comedic and be like, oh, you know, I might be a big guy, but I've got these qualities that you should love as well. And that kind of shaped my early years as a gay. As a gay. So that kind of like shaped the earlier years. But then eventually I just kind of like stopped and stepped away from that because I was like, it's not really me. I'm quite chill. And now I look back and I'd say I'm a completely different person in the scene. I've learned so much about the different intersectionality of the queer community. You know, I wanted to moving to Melbourne really opened my eyes as well. So Melbourne's queer scene is incredible and so vastly different to those that I've found elsewhere in Australia. And, you know, that was also a navigation in itself, and every introduction to the gay scene was moving down here. And, you know, I had different moments where I was going south side and it was still very much like the Gold Coast of like the big guy, not really like no one really cares or wants to know you and whatnot, and you had to be like funny and sassy to like get noticed. And then going north side and like my first experience at the Laird, which is, for those of you at home that don't know, the Laird is a men only bare leather fetish bar, that is, now I call it, it's like a second home. Like I feel so comfortable there. But it took me years of kind of rewiring my own thought process of, oh, these guys find me attractive, they must be lying, like, oh, they're idiots, or what's this? So that was another interesting like introduction to the wider queer community and not just like the Gold Coast community, which was so strange. So many coming outs.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what it is though, isn't it? Like you, every time coming out is the first time, it's very difficult, but every time you meet someone new, you're coming out. Like, I mean, not every time, but
well, yeah, but even still, like, you know, you're coming out in some way of, you know, I might be a gay person, but then I sit in this particular subcategory of gay, or that particular category of gay, or, you know, I'm across both. And I've really enjoyed in the last few years getting to know the wider community and get more involved in community programs to really, you know, give back to community that gave me so much as well. So, and that's kind of shaped me again and helped me reevaluate how I interact with the wider community. And then from that kind of step into that, you know, that mother of the house drag role of, you know, these are my experiences, let's pass that on to the next generation of queers so that they don't have to work as hard to get to kind of like the crazy acceptance I have of myself now. I want to help people get there quicker, you know?
I find it funny that there has been like this whole shift. I have a lot of I don't want to say resentment because I feel like, but I have a lot of issues with this whole like twink, bear, otter, because you know everyone's categorized
Yeah.
in a box, and I remember there was this whole time that I'm like, I'm not really, I'm definitely categorized as a twink, but then
Yeah.
there's also like when you fall under like a twink, there's this whole thing of being like fit and sexy and like you know chiseled jaw bullshit.
Yeah.
That
Like
and I'm definitely not like conventionally attractive in the facial body region. It's kind of just like um got my own quirk to it. But what was I trying to say? Fuck! I had something I really wanted to say, and now I've lost it.
yeah, I suppose like the fitting into the molds and then not fitting into the molds, is that along the lines of?
Yeah, and then when it came into when there's this whole thing, all I see on my feed is like that now on my feed there's all of this body positivity towards like the bear type or the larger guys and stuff like that. That it's actually becoming a thing that's like fuck twinks. Fuck twinks are shit.
Absolutely. I vividly remember there was this status that someone had put up. I won't name names, but if you know, you know. They put up a status basically saying, fuck twinks, twinks are ugly, like fuck off, who needs twinks anyway, basically. And I like responded with my own status and I was like, replace twink with bear in that status and you've got a hate crime, so why is it okay for you to hate on twinks? And you know, like it doesn't weigh out. Like if you're body positive of everyone's body and their own journey, and as long as they are on their way to happy and healthy, no matter what size, shape or form that is, that's what you support. What you don't support is people body shaming other people. Like shame body shaming, but you don't have to put down one body type to bring up another body type. I had this conversation so often with drag queens as well. It's like, you don't have to, like, fans can support multiple queens. And I mean, just this last week, someone was like, oh, this person was robbed. And it's like, well, they're not robbed. They're all on an equal playing field. And it just so happens that this person got one extra vote or one more vote this time. And it doesn't mean that the other person is shit. It just means that this time this person was better. And next week it could be completely different.
Was that tall poppy syndrome or whatever it's called?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some tall poppies that I love to cut down. There are definitely people who I think get their egos overinflated to a point where it's not really tall poppy syndrome. Like they're not growing above. They are, how do you say it? They're kind of looking down on others. Like Yeah. So like, I know some people look at tall poppy of like, oh, this person's doing really well, we should cut them down. It's like, well, no, if they're doing really well and they're bringing the community up with them, that's great. But if you are progressing ahead of the people around you and not doing anything to help bring them with you, that's when you need to be brought down a little bit. So I very much do enjoy sometimes bringing some young performers down to earth when they when they've outgrown their shoes too quickly.
Yeah, I think I can vibe that. There's
also
I this
do it in a way that, or at least I always set out with the intention and try to do it in a way that will bring them down a little bit, but then also boost them back up in a different way. Yeah,
it's a realization of reality, not a pull down. It's just a hey, it's a this. Hello.
Yeah, let's take a moment to breathe and realize that while yes, you're doing amazing, it doesn't make you any better to pull this person down or pull that person down. It just doesn't make sense to do that. If you have to push others down and out of the way to make yourself better and to succeed more, you're doing the wrong thing and you probably shouldn't be doing what you're doing. So maybe think about what it is that you're trying to achieve, you know?
Yeah. I'm getting carried away in my head about the whole twink thing still. I remember, sorry, it just dragged me into this memory flashback. And I was talking to this guy and we were like flirting. It's a rare occasion. And he was just talking about like he's like, oh well, I'm a bear, and all these people like have things against me, and I get like insulted over my weight all the time, and I was like, oh okay, well like that sucks. That sucks, and you should feel good about yourself because whatever. And that was my really empathetic response.
And for you, knowing you, that's a great thing. That's a great conversation.
Me speaking at all and saying anything that has an objective is like a step forward. But this then he went on to mean, and I was kind of like, oh well, I'm a twink or something that came up, and and he's like, no, you're not a twink, and I was like, well, I am. I was like, it wasn't computing at all.
Yeah.
I was like, and then I kind of realized that he wasn't saying that I'm not a twink. He was saying like, you're not a cockhead.
Yeah,
and I was
like you're not falling into the stereotypical like skinny, vicious, beautiful, doesn't do much for a lot. Kind of stereotype of that gay. But while you fall in that category, like you're not the stereotype, like you're the exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
Which I think that's still kind of a little
shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little problematic. I mean, if we stop putting as many labels, people won't feel the need to fit those labels. I mean, I definitely know for a while there, I was trying to fit into every bear stereotype that I could because I was like, well, I'm too big to be, a regular person. So I must be a bear. So, I've got to grow my body hair. I've got to dress this way. I've got to like these types of men. And that's just what I have to do. I've got to drink beer and whatnot. But looping back to like when I was like expressing gender and whatnot, I was never happy because I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. I was doing what I thought I had to do. And now I enjoy all types of bodies. I enjoy all types of people. I appreciate and love everyone unless you're an asshole, and then I'll I like an asshole. If you as a person are a nasty piece of trash work, I'll put you in the bin. Simple as that. Like it doesn't matter who you are. Like if you're trash, you're trash. And myself included. Like I'll bring myself down when I know I'm being an asshole. So yeah.
It's kind of weird because I feel like people who are normies, straight people don't get don't get the same like I don't feel like maybe they do and I have to ask, but don't get that whole like needing to be boxed in, especially straight men. I feel like they've got this kind of either attractive or unattractive thing going on, and then
I've thought about this a lot, I suppose. I have a lot of conversations with friends where I believe that education is key for changing the future of people. I mean, it's one thing to go, oh, that's bad behavior, we need to stop that behavior. And it's like, well, where does that start? With a child. So we need to teach boys to express emotion and to be fun, not just be men, because it's not working. So I think straight people, I think queer people were more aware of the boxes we're being put into because we also put ourselves in those boxes to gain acceptance from the wider community. Whereas straight people kind of tick those boxes and go through the motions without always realizing that that's what they're doing. Like I have so many people I went to high school with who kind of dated in high school, got engaged, went to uni, got engaged, got married, had a kid, bought a house. And like, that's just their process of what they're doing. And I look at, sometimes I'll compare that to my life and I'm like, all right, well, they're the same age, they've got a house, they've got careers, they've got kids, they're happy. But then I'm like, well, am I happy? And I'm like, well, fuck yeah, I am. But I'm a single gay man living my best life. And just because, queer people, I think we break out of those molds, but then we put ourselves into more molds along the way, trying to break out of them.
Yeah.
So I suppose we're more acutely aware of what's going on and what boxes we're ticking and not ticking, whereas the straight people that I know at least don't always realize that they are ticking society's boxes. And I think that's kind of been a little bit evident with the lockdowns as well, in like that sense of privilege, and like the sense of freedoms being taken away. Sorry for the tangent.
Oh, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, like it's hard for everyone, but I feel like we're acutely aware of not having the same rights. So we know what it's like. You know, we went through the postal vote, the yes and no vote for gay marriage. So we've been through that kind of whole country against us or for us and whatnot kind of moment. So we've dealt with adversity quite recently as a community and came through it. So I think it's a bit easier for us to get through the pandemic because we've already, like, we know how to cope with huge amounts of stress a little bit, like we're adjusting. But like straight people haven't really done that much in their lives, you know, they kind of just breeze through ticking boxes they don't realize they're ticking. So to have something stop them so abruptly, it kind of really makes them question a lot and they don't know how to process it. That's how I see it, at least. Tangent, there you go.
No, I think I can, like, to kind of bring a different context to it is my friend was kind of talking about how he's got ADHD and it kind of he's saying he's more acutely aware of social what's socially acceptable because he's constantly having to filter his own behavior so it fits in with the behaviors that everyone else is portraying. And other people are better at copying it and do it naturally. But if you don't do it naturally, then you actually have to recognize it so you can fit in. Because otherwise, because we're all we're pack animals, I think is the thing. And so you kind of you've got to mimic to be able to not be lynched as a witch.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's that's it. Like, we're so acutely aware of what like normality we need to like adhere to be accepted that I think, totally. I think, we tick the boxes. As much as we hate ticking boxes, we love ticking boxes, apparently.
Which, to go, to kind of loop backwards, also really explains a lot as to why you were, is it your 20s when you started kind of playing around with gender roles or like where you fit on the gender spectrum?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's different.
Yeah, I'd come into a space where it was okay to test those waters and to change, and I had access to the information and terminology and whatnot. So, you know, I mean, like, I've got a cousin who her daughter has come out of the closet around about the same age as I did, and they have so much access to so much information about the queer community now that their experience is vastly different to mine. So they don't have to, you know, wait as long to realize what boxes they don't have to tick anymore. Yeah. If that makes sense. So it makes sense.
You have this like, you have these major parts of your personality, like these huge parts that make you a whole. And so you'll end up learning that and kind of developing your sense of self so much later than someone that is either
never has to question their actions.
Yeah. But I'm not trying to shit on straight people. Like I don't
think we are shitting on them. I think and I definitely know there's a lot of people that do. I think it's more just acknowledging that I think as queer people inherently growing up when we grew up, not so much, I feel like the next generations have it a lot easier and they'll do a lot better at like growing and learning and figuring out who they are at a much younger age, which is, you know, the conversation that happens so often is how do you know at that young age that that's what you are? And it's like, well, if you have the information, you know, you've got that all there for you. But if you're having to wait until your mid-20s, like I did, to kind of express gender, express sexuality, and even now in my 30s, I'm still having new experiences with that and changing every day and evolving. You know, so it gets to that, you know, as straight people, you don't really have to do that because you just come out the gate straight away. you don't have to like adjust your behavior. You don't have to kind of like conform to fit in as much because you already kind of do. But like gay people, we've had to adjust ourselves, and then we spend a lot of years kind of undoing that work to really find out who we are as a person and what we do enjoy, what we don't enjoy, and how much of our persona and personality was just ticking a box for society for acceptance until we were in a position to not need it. You know?
Yeah. But I think that's brilliant that the gates are kind of open to have that self-expression earlier, and I'm sure it'll keep on progressing that way. But, on that note, I think I'm gonna thank you so much for sharing your experience.
Random tangents, but good conversation.
Oh no, I love them.
Yeah.
Bye. Thank you.
See ya.